Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about this game. I'm going to show you basically on my rambling way how I talk a little bit in circles. Thanks for being patient with me with that. How to play Clockwork Wars by, I believe it's Hassan Lopez. If I said that wrong, I'm so sorry. This is a pretty interesting game, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on it here in the end. So here it is. Welcome to Clockwork Wars. This is a fantasy steampunk themed game where 2 to 4 players will compete for dominance over like the natural resources, which in turn turn into victory points. Now I will show you all the little things as we go here, but I just wanted to show you how you set the board up. You determine at the back of the book how many players you're playing. So this shows you what for a 4-player, but I chose one of the 2-player maps, one of the basic ones to play. And then you just set it up accordingly. And like I said, I'll go over those tiles, what they mean in just a second. But what you do is you set a few things to the board. Like over here to the side, I set these things up. These are your influence points tokens. These are the red, which is kind of like sorcery. The yellows are religion. And this is kind of your factory or science-y kind of stuff going on here. Now on the backs of these, you'll have 1s and 3s. Well, those are all 3s. But yeah, you'll have 1s or 3s. So that shows you if you need to make change in a bigger game. But if in a 2-player game, you can probably just use these sides anyway. But you can use them face down because a lot of the information's secret. Not that it's that hard to deduce or remember that I've noticed, but just in case you wanted to keep it secret. All right, so we have that over there. On this side, you'll set up, there's 3 generals, which come with their own little matching figures here, which are really cool looking. This is the Leviathan. This one needs a little work with the hair dryer. You can fix that with some minor work. And they have their stats abilities. And the purchase cost is down here. When you acquire those tokens, there'll be a part in the game where you can try to purchase these guys. And that costs like the 5 of the sorcery and 2 of the religion. And this costs 5 of the religion and 2 of the sorcery, manufactory stuff to get the Guardian. I didn't show you the Guardian, did I? I don't know, I may have, but this guy is pretty cool. And they all have their own little special abilities, and I'll just kind of go over those in a second, but I'm just showing you each little thing that you set up. So also in the area, this is the abilities that you get for the research, study, and activation stage. So they're each represented. You'll choose a randomly, let me just show you the back. So across here you have your sorcery, like you'll have a bronze age, a silver age, and a gold age, and this one's kind of silver colored, and the top one will be gold colored. And they have little matching tokens because you can put them on the board, and if you control that area with a token, then you get this special ability, but you have to purchase these during the correct phase. But they give you these cool matching tokens to go with them. But on this side, like I said, you have, like, you'll line up the religion, you'll line up from early age, middle age to late age, early age, middle age, late age, but you'll have, the religion tokens, you'll have the manufacturing, sciencey tokens, and then you'll have the sorcery cards set up over there. And then you'll also want to set up on the board, you'll have to have, pick one of these. There's three different ones of these. This is basically your spy board or your espionage board. They call it court. But when you send a worker here, if you send it to the main board that I showed you before, it will be considered a soldier on the board. But if you send it to here, it'll be court. And then at the end of 3 ages, there's different scoring bonuses. So at the end of the 3rd age, if you have court dominance, then you'll gain 2 espionage cards, which will be these things right here. You'll have middle age. For each other player, lose 2 victory points. And if you control dominance in the late age, the last age here, then you will gain 3 victory points. You also, when you have workers on here, when you place them, you have to take a worker off to be able to play one of these cards. And these cards have all kind of special abilities. You both will start, well, each player will start with one. I kind of have this set up for a 2-player game. But like this one says, you play, this is where the name of it, propaganda, this says combat phase. So at the end of combat phase, you could play this. You would remove one of your court spy people off of this, and then you would do its effect, starting with the active player. And speaking of that, we do have the first player token here, which will go back and forth or around the table, depending on how many players that you have. And then you resolve them with the starting player first. Okay, so yeah, this one, you know, gain 2 victory points for every battle you won during the combat phase. And so, like I said, this game, you win a lot of different ways using spy stuff, gaining resources. But we're going to move on up to the main board here, this track. I may just go ahead and pick this up so you can see a little bit better here. So anyway, so you would set this up on the back side of the board. This has more like gaps between the ages. So there's, instead of 7, there's 9 steps. So the game goes a little bit longer. And then they have all these little spy works cards that you'll put out here with special abilities. And the very first, there's like 7 or 8 stages in the game, and I'll go over those in just a second. You would pick one of these abilities, starting with the first player, and you can just flip it over. Although I think we just kept ours, so nobody knew, but that means nobody else could pick that one. And, you know, after those are chosen, you'll move on to the next step. But here's your scoring track. You put your little white scoring tracker matching the color of your faction, which I'm going to show you in just a second. And you put your early age marker, there's the starting one, and of course when that age ends in the cleanup, then you go to this one. At the end of each age, shows you the little scoring meeple, and then you will score by controlling areas on the board, such as these green ones like forest or these lakes, and there are certain conditions to meet to get those. But let's go ahead and move to the factions, because after you do all that, I like to put these guys right back here. You will control factions. So let's get to a calmer camera angle. Thanks for being patient with that. Okay, so you definitely want to choose between these cool steampunky races. These are the rhinoceros people. And even though it's kind of a light gray, they will have white matching tokens representing your soldiers and spies. These are the pure breeds. They all have their own little special power. Troglodytes and mongrels, which are green here. So on the inside of these boards, let's just say we choose the mongrels versus the rhinocs, okay? But I'll go ahead and take a look at the troglodytes and show you, like on the inside of the boards here, they all have different special abilities. So each one will run over. They show you your worker actions, show you the turn orders, which is spy, master, recruitment, deployment, combat phase, research phase, and scoring phase if applicable. And over here, they kind of go over what the territory types are, which I will do with you real quickly. This thing is the one thing that separates each. When you choose a race that you're going to be, you get a special ability for your special units. Okay, and the engineer shows what he can do. I won't go over it, but you can pause that to read that. I will explain the other ones a little bit better if necessary, but it's not really necessary in this setup because it runs pretty well. So anyway, like let's say you have the rhinocs here, and what you would do is you would take their matching guys accordingly, give those to the white rhinocs and give these to the green mongrels, and it shows you you're going to recruit these little wooden discs, which are the white little wooden discs for your workers. And then when you place them, like I said on the board, they will be considered soldiers. And if you put them at the court over there, they will be considered spies. Okay, but at any time, there's a recruitment phase where you determine how many things that you will get and how many workers you will get. But this tells you what your special unit is. So everybody has what they call a unique unit, and some of them have 2 unique units in it. This one does have 2, and that's called the Crasher, and of course it shows you it has 2. You can deploy 1 in a given turn. You can be only deployed to a citadel or village / city currently under the control of another player, so that means it can only be deployed into battle. The territory you deploy to must be reached through normal deployment rules. And it says during the reinforcement stage for one of your reinforcement orders, you must activate the Crasher to instantly kill up to 3 enemy soldiers. Once used, the Crashers are immediately killed and removed from the game. So that's its special ability by using those 2 unique units. And every race has the different powers on the unique units. Okay, I'm going to go over the territory types real quick, and then we'll roll through the stages just to kind of give you an example of how the combat works and area control works, and it's pretty smooth actually. Like the rule book's not too bad. I mean, it's decent, but it's written fairly well. There's a couple things you could toss a coin on, or just email if you want to be particular, but most of it's pretty common sense if you can't figure something out. So anyway, you choose your faction that has the matching symbol on it. These are called capitals. And when you set up the board, they'll just have a black area, and you can determine who goes where. Like that's the hunter, the mongrel, the green ones, and these are the rhinox over here, which will be the white ones, and that's their capital. That's where you would start from. And they even have little tokens to throw your thing on it. Okay, your clan species on it. So you have this symbol right here, and don't be turned away because these actually look cooler on the back side. So I'm just letting you know that if you wanted the full overview of maps and stuff, each one like this doesn't have to be the boring. This could be the cool looking thing. So you would have like the maps would look really nice, and the lakes would look like lakes and forests and so forth. But if you just want ease of play, then you can just play on this side. So this is a capital. This is considered a village unless 3 workers are on it that you control in it, and that becomes a city. And there's an advantage to that, and I'll get to that in a second. This is a citadel, which is used to help you deploy out other in a battle, adjacent battles. You can move people over in the reinforcement stage. This is a lake, which you score points on. This is the forest you score points on. This is called the tower, which is your sorcery symbol. So if you have workers on that, when you go to the science age, you will, the research and study stage, you will be able to pick up a token for every one of these that you control, just like the same thing for the manufactory cards. You would get a gray token for every one of these you control, and for every one of these areas you control, you will get a yellow token, which that's the tower, the shrine. So it's the manufactory, the tower, which is sorcery, and the shrine, which is the yellow religion one. And these are the barons. There's nothing on this map that uses the barons, but the barons have no special ability. It's just a place sometimes you have to move through. You can control it, but in the end, it's not really that good of a card. But you could probably build some cool maps. So I was just kind of showing you what all the cards look like with the other sides to them, like the sorcery, and that's the tower there. These are actually really good looking, but they can be kind of busy. So for the first time you play, I almost recommend doing the other side. That's how I got it set up over here, just so they're easier to read and so you know what's going on. Everybody will have their shields up because you have these in front of you. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to have the Spy Master phase. And the Spy Master is what I was telling you earlier. You'll go up to the track up there and you'll choose one of these special abilities. And like it'll either give you a victory point or let you select the different actions. Like if you take Technophilia, you get to choose the going first during the special ability phase to buy these things. So you'll get your tokens first for all the areas control, and then your opponent will, and then you'll get to be able to purchase these first. Okay, so anyway, the Spy Master phase, you get to choose one of the special actions, flip it up first, and then the second player will do the same, and then you'll move to the next stage on here, which is the recruitment phase. So this is pretty straightforward. This means this is where you finally get to grab people. Okay, so behind your screen, like you would look at every place that you control. So at the beginning, all you control is your capital. So like let's say the Rhinox over here to the right, they all they have is their capital at the beginning. So he's just going to take 4 of his workers like so, and then he's going to put them behind his shield. So he'll have those here. These are not candy, although they look like those little candy things. So like they'll be behind the shield, And so the deployment rules say that you can deploy on a territory you control or one adjacent to it, or you can march. And marching is, so I say, okay, well, I want to go to this one. I want to march to try to control a village. So, but to march there, you have to drop off one of your people and to get to that. Now you could have dropped the other 3 here, to make it there or whatever, if, after you control. But the thing is, you can also drop anything adjacent to the area that you control. You always are considered to control this. And so you drop these, you could do that, for instance, if you wanted to. And then you would control those areas at the end of your turn, assuming that your opponent has done the same. Well, How do you know where you want to go? Well, that's the whole meat of the game. Okay, so under your recruitment, after you recruit, you go to deploy. And also about recruitment, let me also tell you the full scope of it. So if you happen to control like a village, then you will get an additional token at the beginning. So your capital will give you 4 every recruitment phase, and the villages will give you an additional 1. But if you control it with at least 3 soldiers there, then you will get an additional 2 instead, because it turns into a city. And so that's, the little rules variant between the village and the city. So you would get 6. So if you just had 1 token here, at least 3 there, and your capital, so that's 4, 5, 6, 7. You get 7 workers to put behind your screen that you could deploy. Now, you don't have to deploy them. You can actually save them up, which is what I like about the game. Now, we recruited. We did the spy master, recruited, putting all the things, and then we're going to deploy. But how do we deploy to these places? Well, like I said, that's the meat of the game. So each character will have one of these deployment sheets. And so it'll be simultaneously secret hidden information. As you can see, me and my friend Conrad, we played this a couple of times, and they give you a thick pad. So this definitely can play probably at least 3 games on these things. And they give you an example of how it works. So you're like, I'm going to move 1 worker to M1. Everything has these labels on it. So let's say I just wanted to let's say I was over here as the Rhinox, and I wanted to put 2 people on M2. Well, all I have to do is I'd write a 2 on this side and put M2, and that's 2 of my workers going there. Or if I want to put whatever, and then 1 on T2, then I would do that. And maybe I'm going to save the other guys. And it's like, okay, are you ready? Have you got yours? And then the first player would reveal where they put their, people. And then the other person, the green player, would reveal where he put his people. Okay. So like maybe he went out, whatever here, and he's trying to, get a hold of some force first during some of the scoring phase. Okay. Now after deployment phase, you move immediately to check and see if there's a combat. At any time when after deployment, there's there's not a clear control. You control an area when you have at least 1 token, or you're the only one that basically has armies or soldiers inside there. So let's say at the end of a deployment phase, you have the situation where you both are in the same area. Well, now combat ensues. So what happens is there's a reinforcement stage. So you might have a spy card up here that has a special ability that lets you maybe deploy a worker if you had one behind your screen, or do different things. But the main thing is if you have characters on the Citadel, you can move them into an adjacent battle unless they have an opposing unit in there already. Like that's a unique unit. The green one, by the way, basically its special ability is it counts as 2 to the army strength. So if it was in here, that'd be 2 plus 2, which is 4, and this is 1 for each one. But let's just say it was set up like this, and white could not reinforce. So that you go to the combat phase and you go to the reinforcement stage. Now we go to battle. Basically, that's just deterministic combat, where you say, all right, well, everybody tried to play anything that they could, so now we just have to resolve it. Well, 3 beats 2, so they're going to win this battle. Okay, the white will, the Rhinox will. And what happens is basically for every unit that's killed, you have to kill off one of your units. They word it differently, so they say, backwards, where it's like, subtract the number of defeated versus what you have left, and that's what you can leave in there. But basically, you're going to lose a unit for every unit that was in there in a 2-player game. In a 3-player game, it's the 2 highest, that you get to keep. The winning one, like if there was 3 units, 3 different armies in there, then it will be, let's say white had 5, and then green had 4, and then red had 2. Well, red's defeated, green also is defeated, but the 2 highest were white at 5 and green at 4. So 5 minus 4 is 1, and so that would be left with 1. So they would win that. So that's how easy combat works. And trust me, the meat of this game is actually deployment. Because even though it's just like, well, this looks really simple, but I tell you what, you get into the mind of where you're trying to control areas, okay? Because when you come to the scoring phase, that's where it all really breaks down. So now we go to the attrition stage, which is pretty interesting. So after battles occur, and you only do this if there's a battle stage, you have to check back. Let's say the Rhinox had some stuff going through here. And let's just say they shot straight to the line, which is pretty interesting to me. But for some reason, there was a battle here, and green had won this battle. Well, what happens is if you don't, if you can't trace your armies back to either your capital or a village that you control, anything that's disconnected by a supply line, you would lose one worker / soldier there. And so that could be very painful, especially if you had tried to spread yourself too thin. And, so, if that was if this had happened, well, for some reason they didn't have this one, and they decided to come up this way. And so it's like, oh, you'd lose this one. You'd lose one of those. There's still one left. And then you would lose this one because it's not, you don't control it. Now, if you, of course, you had it connected back to a village or a city being 3 units on there, then this is fine. That would be able to stay. So that's the attrition stage. So you have to kind of be aware of that. And actually, I used that to my advantage one time to stop my opponent from gaining stuff in the research phase. So, which that brings us to the research phase. So first thing you do is study. So starting with the first player, you look at how many places that you control that have either the religion, the sorcery, or that on it, and then you grab the appropriate tokens matching it, not per how many workers you have there, just by controlling it. So I could have 5 soldiers on this area, but I'm only going to get 1 token for that. One that says 1, that says a 3. But anyway, so for every area that you control, you grab one of those, and then that's your study phase, and then you'll go basically to your purchase phase, but they call it research. And so you go to the research cards. You go to the research phase. You study, which is getting your IP tokens, and then you discover, which is coming back over here, and then starting with the player who has the first rights to this, which is the first player, unless they chose the Technophilia one, then that player would get to start all the stages. But they can only buy, since we're in the first early stage over here, in the early age, they can only buy the bronze one. So these are only available. But when they eventually get into the second age, then they can buy this or that. Now these are not replenished; they're just whatever they are. You choose these randomly, and there's many cards to choose from, so you can have a different experience each time. And then when you finally make it to the third age, you can possibly buy these by the cost. So that would cost you 7 of the gray, 7 of the red, 6 of the yellow, which is, you know what they do. But anyway, that's how that works. And you purchase those, and then they will almost immediately activate, because these cards have something like, let's just say you had picked this up. And the first thing that you would do is you'd have to make sure you qualify. You have to put this, when you'd get the token that matches it, and then you would put this in an area that you control. So it has to be in your capital or an area that you previously had something in. So let's say this guy right here had this. You could put this in here or the capital, but this stays. Now here's the rule though: you can't have more than one of these tokens in here. So later on, it makes it hard to buy 2 of these cards. So if you do double up, there's no way you can buy the third one unless you control another one of the manufactory, the gray sciencey areas. But also you have to control it, because if your opponent ever ends up controlling that over you, then they will gain the benefit of this during the next stage in the research phase, which is called the activation stage. Yep, right there. And activation basically are what 90% of these cards kick on. Now, not all of them do this, but this one says you receive a +1. This one's a static ability, so you receive a +1 bonus to army strength in all battles. So that's just an active ability that's up all the time. But most of them say stuff like, okay, yeah, there you go. Most of them say, during each activation stage, you may kill 1 enemy soldier in every territory that is adjacent to elemental storm. So that's a pretty good ability. So if elemental storm's out here and you control it, and then you got battles happening near it, then you would be able to apply this during this stage of the game. And they do all kind of different things, which are very helpful in the game. Now, also during this time that you can also purchase one of these cool commander things. So the steam tank here basically says, once acquired, immediately place the steam tank directly onto either your capital or citadel that you control. The steam tank may move 1 tile at the beginning of each deployment phase. You may move the steam tank to any territory an opponent controls or one that is uncontrolled. However, the steam tank cannot move into an opposing territory that contains the Guardian, which is this guy here. So if you have the Guardian, he has a couple special abilities, but the steam tank cannot move in there. It says if the steam tank is destroyed in battle, it must be removed from the game. So that's what happens with him. The Leviathan's pretty cool. I actually bought him the last game I played. It says, when you research the Leviathan, keep it into your play area until you decide to use it. You may choose to play it at the end of the reinforcement stage once all the players have passed. You can deploy the Leviathan to any battle you're engaged in. You win the battle. All your opponent's units are killed, and you take no losses. The Leviathan can even destroy the steam tank. You gain 1 victory point for every enemy unit killed by the Leviathan. Immediately after this battle is resolved, remove the Leviathan from the game. So basically, he's like a bomb in an area. So if you send him in where there's a big battle, you guarantee victory. He's sitting on your side until you decide to bring him in during that, and it wipes out all the enemies, and you're going to win that and get a victory point for each one of the people killed there. And of course, the Guardian keeps other people, keeps the steam from entering, the steam tank from entering. Says, when you research the Guardian, keep it in play until you choose to decide to use it. You may deploy the Guardian to any territory under your control at the beginning of the recruitment phase. The Guardian remains in this territory the rest of the game unless moved with the Spy Master card Gambit. So there is a card up there with the Spy Masters that's called Gambit that allow you to move units, soldiers from one territory to another. Other than that, you can only deploy, and that's how you sort of move by the new people that you recruit and then move off of the different areas that you already control. You can also march. I think I described that just in case I didn't cover it. I may have. I've been yapping a little bit. So you can move up to 2, but you have to drop off, and it can't have anything already in it to march through something. It has to be cleared out. So anyway, the Guardian's a real good card. You pop it out, and it kind of keeps people away from you. It says your opponents may not initiate combat in this territory by deploying units to it. They have to kind of move in using the Gambit to start it, so they can't deploy. So this protects an area, especially if it's a resource. It says, however, enemies, of course, can use espionage cards and can target the Guardian's territory. So these Spy Master cards do come in very handy. There's a ton of little abilities on here. Okay, so let's get to the next stage, which that ends all the main things. So now if you happen to go to the scoring phase, this is where everything happens here. So you're going to go to victory points on the board, then you're going to go to court dominance, and then you're going to do a pollution stage. So the victory points are awarded at the end on the track when you get to it. And so basically you'll get a point for every worker that you have placed on a forest that you control. So like this would score you 2 points, but you don't get any more. Like you can have 4 on there, but you're only going to get 3. So you might want to put more workers on here to help protect it. But when it comes to the scoring phase, you can only have up to 3 points for each forest that you control. And now lakes, you have to have, I believe, at least 3 units on it, but they score 2 points. Now on the other 2-player variation board, the very center lake has a special rule that says it's worth 4 points if you control it with 3. But so basically that's a good bulk of your points. And then of course you have Spy Master, Leviathan, these other little things that add into it. But that's the main scoring of the scoring phase. But now you get to the part that's actually really cool of the scoring phase, which is the court dominance. So this is another way, especially in this card, it does have a couple. So I think I read this off earlier here. So you'll look at whatever age that you're in, and then you'll give yourself the main award. So this one you get 2 espionage cards. This one here, for each other player, they lose 2 victory points. And in the late age, you gain 3 victory points. So you gain 3 victory points. So that's really cool. And that's pretty much the bulk of it. And then you advance the marker to the next age or step, wherever you go, especially if you just scored, it'll be in the next age that you go. And you'll just repeat this process until you finish off the last scoring point in the late age or third age, however you want to call it. And whoever has the most victory points on the victory track is the winner. Okay, so that was Clockwork Wars, the basic gist of how to play. Now, a couple of things about the game. The art is amazing. I like the fantasy steampunk theme to it. Each person has its different special ability for the unique units, which also deploy free for any time. You don't have to purchase those in the recruitment stage. But I thought that this game was pretty good. I would give this a solid 8. Okay, so I liked it a lot. I really want to play this with a bigger count, like a full 4. I know that there's some expansions to get to it, and my buddy Conrad's looking into getting some. I guess this hasn't been as popular, at least talked about by other people, maybe because the white little chips that you use for the warriors, but you have to because there's so many, because you can have like 25 of those things or whatever on the board, possibly at one time. And if you turn those into little miniatures, maybe if you did it like the Lords of Hellas, make the miniatures really small, you might be able to get away with putting them on there. But in a 4-player game, that'd be a lot of crowded areas. But they do make the boards, have you expand them, make them a little bit bigger inside a 4-player game. So maybe it would work. But other than that, gosh, I mean, like the cards are really great quality. And let me take a look at this box again. I didn't show you, but this box is a beast. It's like, I mean, I could probably almost knock somebody out with that thing. I mean, it is huge. Gosh, and the card quality is really, really good. The Spy Master cards are good. Like this first player token too. I mean, all of this stuff, the components are really nice. The tiles are high quality. Like I said, the rule book's pretty good. I'm not the best interpreter of rule books. I usually have to read something 2 or 3 times to make sure I get it. And I had to look up a couple of things, but I think you do with some of these bigger battle games. But for the most part, it moved pretty smooth, pretty easy to learn. And you can use common sense to determine most of the rest of it out. But I highly recommend this game. I want to play it more. So that's the best recommendation that I can give it. Thank you so much for watching The Dice Matrix. My name's Eric Tarver. And until next time, keep the dice rolling.